I'm Kath Megaw. I'm a Paediatric Dietitian, and I've partnered with PediaSure to bring you a very exciting vlog series on picky eating. And today we are going to be covering sensory picky eaters. These children are very different to your standard picky eaters. And I want to discuss some of the differences because the way we approach a sensory picky eater versus a normal picky eater can be quite different. So what would differentiate a sensory picky eater from just a normal picky eater is just having a fussy day or going through a fussy month or two. So your sensory picky eater is a child who generally struggles with their sensory environment. So either noise, it might be touch, it might be sight, it might be just feeling overwhelmed with just general amounts of people in the environment. They don't enjoy shopping centers. And then also these children sometimes struggle with food. So it could be the smell of food, it could be the taste of food, it could be the texture of food. Now these sensory picky eaters, unlike the picky eater, who would be able to and willing to want to try something new, the sensory picky eater would be very put off and quite fearful about new food. And that's largely because they've experienced an uncomfortable feeling around something that was new that was offered to them. So for example, if a picky eater was presented with a new food, they might go, no, I don't want to. You say, come on, just quickly try it. And they might just take a bite and go, no, thanks, I don't like it. Whereas your sensory picky eater might run away, might throw a tantrum, might burst into tears. Because for them, it's more than just trying something new. It's the whole experience of what it will create, both mental pain and sometimes physical pain in their bodies. And these might have been children that have experienced terrible reflux as babies, children that have maybe had terrible experiences maybe with illness like gastro, or been hospitalized where they've needed to have tubes down their throats. These children can be quite sensory and quite fearful. Something like Pavlov's theory. So they were given something to try in a food, they may be vomited, so that experience now is related to the food and they don't want to experience that again. So in their mind, every new thing could cause that sort of experience and they want to avoid pain at all costs. Most of us want to avoid pain. But the sensory picky eater is quite sensitive to this. So what's really important to remember is that the standard things that we say to moms with picky eaters about to tell your child to just try one bite or to eat the food that I've presented you and at least, just have a few things on your plate is not as easy when it comes to the sensory picky eater. For the sensory picky eater, we have to acknowledge and validate that food can be quite scary, that it can be quite fearful for them because they are experiencing it at a very different level to what maybe we would experience it, or just a child who's typical with regards to managing their sensory environment. So it's really important that you don't pressurize your sensory eater into eating because they've already got enough fear around the food. So you really want to validate that fear, as I said. And then what you want to do is start to desensitize your child. And you do this in a very non-threatening way. So you don't desensitize them by trying to get them to eat the food. You desensitize them by getting them to experience the food where they don't have to eat it. So maybe in play, in creating fun pictures with food, in touching food, in just letting them experience feeling food. It's much safer to touch food with your hands than touch it with your mouth and your tongue, because that's then you taking the food into your body, and so it can be quite scary. Whereas if you touch it with your hands, you can keep it at what we call like arm's length, and then you don't feel so threatened by it. So if your child is very sensitive to smell, you can have a game where you all block your noses and you bring out the food, that smelly food, and they'll still get a bit of a whiff of it, but they won't feel so overwhelmed by it and so caught off guard. Often children who are sensory get caught off guard, so they'll walk into the kitchen and they'll be knocked with the smell of you baking banana and the smell of garlic or the smell of onion or something like that, and they'll be put off and run out the kitchen. So if you prepare them and say, we're going to play the smell game, let's block our noses and see if we can still smell things, then it's an easier way to start to desensitize them. And we know that we get smell fatigue, which is great in the case of sensory eaters. The deal is you've just got to keep them around that smell long enough to give them smell fatigue, that they can start to realize it's not as scary as what it used to be. So this is one of the very helpful ways that you can slowly desensitize them. Another way to do it is also to take them shopping with you. So they're outdoors, they're in an environment where they don't have to eat the food at all because you're at the shops, you can't eat the food there, and they can just maybe take the banana off the shelf and put it in the trolley, or take the tomato, or take the meat out of the fridge and put it in the trolley for you. And so they're slowly interacting with it, but they don't have to eat it. That's not what's expected of them. And this slowly will desensitize them. What's also really encouraging is that as they grow, their sensory system will definitely calm down. So yes, you still get sensory eaters who are older. You might even be one yourself, but it will become slowly easier and less as they get older, and you're able to then encourage tasting and trying of different foods on a more regular basis. But for your little sensory eater who is struggling and you're wanting to integrate them into family meal times, get them to maybe try some new foods, what are some of the things that you can do? As well as desensitizing them in the way I mentioned just now, you can also become a little bit more active as they trust you with challenging them a little bit. And you can do the kind of week challenge, which is where you say, on a Monday, you just have to smell the food. And on a Tuesday, you have to kiss the food or just give it a little touch to your lips. And on a Wednesday, you have to lick the food. And a Thursday, you get to just put it in your mouth and you can spit it out. And Friday, we're going to try and chew and swallow. And if you get that right on Saturday, we can maybe get you a little treat like a little box car or a little packet of stickers or something like that, just to incentivize them, because they really are taking brave and courageous steps in doing those actions if they are a sensory eater. So this really applies to your child if your child is a sensory eater. And this little way of doing it slowly, building trust, works really well, because that's really what they've got to learn, is to trust the food and to trust you giving them the food, that there's no pressure, but it's going to help them if they start to learn and try different foods. So I hope this gave you some good tips for your sensory eater, and that you will be able to take your little one on this journey and getting them eating a bigger variety of food. But in the meantime, while you are taking them, and to take the pressure off them, because often as parents, we struggle with the idea that our sensory eater is not getting all the nutrition that they need. It's really helpful then to have a nutritional supplement on board like PediaSure that can give you peace of mind, knowing that your child's getting all the nutrition that they need. The protein content is wonderful. The micronutrients are there. It's got your prebiotics in there for healthy gut health. It's got your omega-3s in there for good brain health. So it really is wonderful, giving you peace of mind. So your nutritional supplement that's milky and white is a very neutral looking color and a neutral experience for your sensory eater. So it's definitely not threatening. It's easy to drink and it's easy to tolerate. And this can really help you and your picky eater, give you peace of mind as you both go on the journey to desensitizing your little sensory eater to some of the foods out there that you want them to eat.